Hello there and welcome to Turner's Workshop. In this week's video I'm going to be showing you how to carry out a full service on this Polaris Sportsman 550 ATV. Now although I'm carrying out this job on the 550, it'll be a very similar process for the 850 model as well. The manuals actually correspond on the 550 and 850, except the 850's got two cylinders, so you'll have two spark plugs. This quad bike's used on a farm, so if you couldn't tell, it's very muddy underneath. So I'm going to start by giving it a thorough clean, and that'll make it much nicer to work on as well. If you want to crack on and jump straight into the servicing, I'll put a timestamp on the screen now to where we begin doing the air filter change. And if you're still with me now, I can only assume you want to see me clean this quad bike up. So I'll do a little time lapse of me cleaning the quad, and then we'll take it for a spin to warm the engine up. With the quad bike now nice and clean, I then take it for a spin to warm all of the fluids up. We've got front axle, rear axle, transmission and engine oils to change. So take it for a nice spin, warm them all up, and that will help when you come to drain it. One thing to note about this quad bike is that it's quite difficult to get in and out of gear, especially when it's cold, so it'll be interesting to see if it's any better once the transmission fluid's been changed. I slowly ride the quad bike around the stables, being very careful not to knock over the owner's motorbike, because it's a very nice bike, just look at it. And then we're going to be carrying out the service on the front driveway because it's nice and flat. And I put a ground sheet down before I park the quad up, just so that I'm protecting the driveway from any oil spills. This is a really important machine on the farm, so we're going to be using OEM parts for this service. And I put links in the description below to any specific tools and materials you might need for carrying out this job. We're going to start off with a really straightforward job, and that's changing the air filter. So we need to remove the seat, and to do that you grab it at the back and just pull it up, and then it slides out. With the seat removed, we can now remove the air filter. The filter housing is located at the front here, and it's got two little screws that you can undo by hand. So just undo these and take the cover off. And with the cover removed, you can then remove the filter. The filter comes with a waterproof jacket. I'm just removing the old one so we can do a little comparison. And there we go, that's much better. So I put a brand new waterproof jacket over the new filter and then can insert it back into the filter housing. And before putting the new filter in, I just give this housing a little clean out as well. The open end of the filter goes in first, and then you just push it into the little recessed part at the back. Just give it a little wiggle to make sure it's seated properly, and then you can refit the cover. With the cover back on, you just screw it up and make sure it seals nicely around the edge so water can't get in. And that's how you replace the air filter on a Polaris ATV. Next up, we're going to be changing the engine oil and filter. So I remove the dipstick and check the current oil level and look at the condition of the oil as well. As you can see, it's got enough oil in there, but it's very dirty, so definitely time for a change. If we go underneath the quad bike, right in the middle you'll find the oil filter and oil sump plug. For the sump plug you're going to need an 8mm hex socket, so get one of those on your ratchet and then loosen off the sump plug. Make sure it's seated in there nicely, because the last thing you want to do is round off that bolt, as you'll see me do a little bit later on in this video. Now you should be wearing gloves at this point, but I forgot or something like that. Anyway, get your drain pan and put it in position underneath the drain point and remove the plug. Allow the oil to drain into your pan, like that. The easiest method to remove this oil filter is to use one of these cap tools, and this one fits perfectly, so I'll put a link in the description to this tool. You'll see in a moment that access is really tight under there for removing the oil filter. You can't really use the strap type or the chains, and the adjustable ones aren't likely to fit in this hole, so I'd recommend getting this special tool for removing the oil filter. Where's your gloves? I know, I should be wearing gloves. Old engine oil is carcinogenic, so make sure you wear gloves, and safety glasses as well. It's a bit late for that, mate. Top tip for getting these rubber gloves on when you've got sweaty, oily hands: get yourself some talcum powder and sprinkle it on your hands, and that will make your life much easier. Right, now our hands are protected, we can get rid of the old oil filter. And then I'm going to get some rag and just clean up the bottom of the engine where the oil filter sits. So just give that a good clean up, make sure all the surfaces are nice and smooth, ready for our new oil filter. Now I've always been taught that if the oil filter is upside down like this, it's best practice to fill it up with oil. And then that way you don't risk starving your engine of oil when you come to start it after the service. Don't forget to put a light smear of oil around the rubber seal, and that should prevent it binding up when you come to screw it back in. It's a bit of a balancing act trying to get the new filter in position without spilling any oil, but carefully just put the new filter through the hole in the bottom and screw it back into the bottom of the engine. It's really unnecessary to over tighten this type of oil filter, so just nip it up so it's hand tight. And as long as it doesn't leak, that'll be absolutely fine. The sump plug on this quad bike has a copper sealing washer, or a crush washer as they're commonly known, so we're going to be replacing that. Once they've been used once, you want to throw them in the bin, so put a new crush washer on and then refit the sump plug. And we're going to be talking this to specification, which is 20 to 23 Newton meters. Give it a quick wipe up round there if you want. I got this funnel set off of Amazon, and it's got lots of different size funnels and attachments, which is going to come in handy for this job because we've got lots of difficult fill points to get to. A standard funnel like this doesn't really fit in there very well, but this angled one works perfectly. I then fill the engine up with PS4 oil. Nope, that's not PlayStation 4, it's Polaris synthetic 4-stroke engine oil. 5W50 with a temperature range of -40 degrees up to +40 degrees. And the engine takes exactly 2 litres, so you get the right amount in the service kit. I then check the oil level, and you can see it reaches the max line on the dipstick, and just look how clean this oil is. That's so much better. With the oil change complete, I just give it a quick start up to allow the oil to circulate, and you can also get underneath and just check for any leaks. You should be alright, but it's worth just checking. The spark plugs are located on the right hand side of the quad bike, and to get access to them you have to remove this panel here where the gear stick comes through. To remove the plastic clips you carefully pop out the centerpiece using a screwdriver or something similar, and then by wiggling the panel the clips just come out like that. It's got a 10mm bolt in the corner as well, so just take this out and then you'll be able to remove the panel. Remove the spark plug lead by just pulling that out like that, and then we can get a socket in there to remove the spark plug. You're going to want a 16mm deep socket for this quad bike, so just loosen it off, and it sits quite deep inside the engine, so to get it out you're going to need some long nose pliers. Unfortunately, I didn't have any long nose pliers with me, but I did have a couple of screwdrivers, so I tried to fish it out with these. It helps if you're good at using chopsticks, and unfortunately I'm not, so it took me a good few attempts to try and get the spark plug out, but eventually I did manage to fish it out. So after all that, let's get our new spark plug. Wait a minute, they sent me the wrong bloody spark plug. So we're going to have to put the old spark plug back in and order a replacement new one. You want a BKR6E NGK spark plug for this. So let's put the old one back in, and for argument's sake, let's just pretend it's a new one. So put the new spark plug in and torque it to specification. It's 25 Newton meters for the spark plug, and then refit the cap. Lovely. Now I have ordered a replacement spark plug and will be back to change that out next time I'm here. But for now, let's refit the side panel and move on to the next part of this service. And we've finished with the top section of the quad bike now, so we can refit the seat. And to do that, you just slide it underneath there and then push the back section down. Now this is where it can get a little bit confusing because there's a few different oils in this machine. So for the rear axle, it takes this angle drive fluid. For the main transmission, it uses AGL, which stands for ATV Gearcase lubricant, which is transmission fluid. And then in the front axle, we're going to be using this demand drive fluid. And it's important we don't get these mixed up because we could really damage the machine. We're starting off with the rear gear case. The fill plug is located just here on the rear axle. And we start by removing the fill plug because if we can't remove that and we've already drained the fluid out, then we're going to have a bit of a nightmare on our hands. So at least this way, if we know we can't remove the fill plug, we're not going to be draining the oil out. I think that makes sense. Anyway, these are really tight, so I had to call in the big guns. That should do it. Make sure it's seated in there nicely so you don't round the plugs off, and then just loosen off the fill plug and the drain plug, which is located just below it. With both the plugs loosened off, we can then remove them completely. So just get your ratchet in there, loosen the plugs off, and then you can just undo them by hand. Again, I start with a fill plug for this, and that's just so that it vents properly. You can see it's slightly overfilled last time anyway. It was probably filled up on a slope. Then get your catch tray underneath the quad bike, and then you can remove the drain plug as well. It really doesn't take long to drain. It only has a little bit of oil in it, 210 ml to be exact. So just drop that oil out and then clean off the drain plug as well. It's got a magnet on it, so it collects all the swarf up from inside the gear case. You can see that's quite dirty actually. So just wipe that off. Now all of the drain and fill plugs in this video require an 8mm hex socket, and the axles and gearbox have these rubber O-rings on the plugs, so just inspect the rubber O-ring. If they look in good condition, you can reuse them. If not, you might want to try and source some new ones. So give the rear axle a quick wipe up and then refit the drain plug. And this can be torqued up to 14 to 19 Newton meters. I just set my torque wrench to 20 Newton meters because that's the kind of guy I am.
Oh, you've over tightened it.
Sorry, did you say something? Right, with the drain plug installed, we can then fill the rear axle with our angle drive fluid. So in the funnel set that I got, it's got this long tube which fits in there quite nicely. And we can connect our funnel to this and then just pour in our angle drive fluid. And you know the gear case is full when it starts spilling out of the fill hole. It wants to be level with the bottom of the fill hole, so once that starts oozing out, you can refit the fill plug and torque it to specification, which is also 14 to 19 Newton meters, or if you like living life on the edge, call it 20. Cowboy. The transmission plugs are a little bit harder to get at, so the fill plug is located in here, and we're going to need to use a breaker bar to loosen this one off as well because it's very tight. The drain plug is further down, right at the bottom there. So I use a breaker bar for loosening off the fill plug, but I can't quite reach in to get the drain plug, so I'm going to have to remove the under tray. It's got 8 T40 Torx bolts underneath it to remove the plastic under tray, but that will give you much better access to the drain plug on the transmission. I'd say it's probably best to remove this under tray before doing the rear gear case as well, because the fill and drain plugs are located directly above it. When we drained the oil, it covered this under tray in oil. With the under tray removed, we can now access the drain plug on the transmission. So loosen that off and then remove it completely. Obviously you want your catch tray under there at this point. I was a little bit concerned because the oil draining out was actually yellow in colour, whereas the oil had been supplied, the AGL Plus, is purple in colour. So I wasn't sure I had the right oil. After a quick check, it turns out I do need the AGL Plus, which is a purple one, so I'm not sure what fluid has been used in this previously. So once again, you can see little pieces of swarf on the magnetic drain plug, so let's wipe them off and refit it. And the torque specification for the fill and drain plugs on the transmission, again 14 to 19 Newton meters. And for the transmission, we're going to be using our AGL fluid, so just pour that in. The kit was supplied with a 1 litre bottle and it just about filled up the transmission, so it's supplied with the perfect amount of fluid. You don't get any spare, unfortunately, but you shouldn't have to top it up anyway, providing you don't have any leaks on your transmission. Once the box has been filled up, we can refit the fill plug and torque it to specification. That's right, you guessed it, 14 to 19 Newton meters. Before we move on to the front gear case, I'm just going to refit this under tray at the back of the quad bike. It's time to have some real fun now. The front gear case. This is a fill plug in here, so we need to loosen this off, but it is very, very tight. I'm going to have to get the breaker bar on it. I'll give it a few taps to make sure it's seated in there nicely, as I was talking about earlier, because the last thing we want to do is round off this bolt. Oh god. Oh no. Let's give this one last try. I use a hammer just to tap the socket piece in a little bit further in the hope that it's going to bite on the plug. And then I use my breaker bar just to try and loosen it off. You reckon it's going to work? No, of course not. It's completely rounded off. That's the whole reason I hate these hex plugs. I mean, why can't they just use a normal bolt in there with flat sides and then I can use a normal socket? Who the hell designs these things? Ah. Right, that's enough moaning. Let's take the whole front end off just so we can get this plug out. Okay, maybe I was exaggerating a little bit. It's just 4 bolts. You've got 2 13mm in the bottom section and then 2 6mm Allen bolts in the grill, which hold the bull bars on and this lower section. So once you've removed those 4 bolts, the lower section can come out and then you can access that fill plug much easier. I used some mole grips to try and loosen off the fill plug, and on the first attempt I didn't have much luck. So I try again, clamping the mole grips down tighter and tighter each time, using a hammer to try and shock it a little bit. I then turn the grips up the other way, give it a hammer, and eventually I managed to loosen the plug off. And now we can remove the drain plug, which is located on the bottom of the front gear case. So just remove that and then drain the oil. Let's clean off the magnetic drain plug. You can see this is quite dirty. And then refit it and torque it to specification. The front gear case drain plug is torqued to 15 Newton meters. And then we can get our handy fill tube and put it in the fill hole. And we're going to fill up the front gear case with our demand drive fluid. So let's just pour that in until it starts spilling out the fill hole. Refit the fill plug and torque it to specification, which is 11 to 14 Newton meters, believe it or not. Now because the plug was rounded off, I had to use my special torque wrench for this. So you just attach that and then torque it just like that. 14 Newton meters exactly. And last but not least, we're going to grease up all of the nipples. There are many nipples on this machine. You've got 4 on the upper control arm bushes, 4 on the lower control arm bushes. That's on the front and back. So you've got 8 at the front, 8 at the back. That's 16 just on the A arms. So 3 squirts max into each nipple. And you should see a nice little bit of squeeze out in the joints. And then just use a bit of rag to wipe off the excess. Now you will need a flexible nozzle on the end of your grease gun to get into all the nipples because some of them are quite hard to access. Let's not forget to refit the front section, so just 4 bolts, put that back on, finish greasing up the nipples, and we're done. Time to take it for a spin. I'll also put a link in the description to the manual for this quad bike, and that's where I got all the specifications from. Now, I thought changing the transmission fluid might make the gear changes a bit smoother, but it hasn't really made much of a difference. Maybe that's just how these gearboxes are, I'm not too sure. Let me know in the comments if you have one of these and whether you've got a stiff gearbox or not. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you found this video useful and you enjoyed watching it. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And if you click that alarm bell, you'll get notifications when I post new videos. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys, take care.